purpose of this video is to share what I've learned about the art of biscuit making over the past few months. I decided I would learn to make biscuits from scratch. I was compelled to accomplish this task because I can cook up delicious sausage gravy. I've always thought that the title Hoosier might possibly mean people who make good gravy. Perhaps there was a time in Indiana's past when the biscuits were homemade as well as the gravy, but for my entire life I've been handicapped by the fact that my gravy had to go over biscuits from a can, or on the old Hoosier standby, toast. Putting luscious sausage gravy on a canned biscuit seems like heresy to me. So, this adventure for me is a quest to master the first half of the staple meal of people everywhere, the biscuit part of biscuits and gravy. Biscuit making was once a staple in the kitchen. What could be easier? The ingredients are flour, fat, milk, and a few common salts. How did we go from Mom knowing how to make such a simple thing as biscuits to her buying them in a can from the store? Somebody pulled a fast one over on Mom and convinced her that Grandma's scratch biscuits were inferior to the canned biscuits from the grocery. I imagine there are regions of the country where biscuits from scratch are the norm, but most of the folks I know in central Indiana no longer think about making biscuits from scratch. I want to acknowledge that I am by no means an expert on biscuit making. I've just begun to experiment with the possibilities. If you are a regular biscuit maker, you're way ahead of me and there's nothing I can teach you. I researched several dozen biscuit recipes from the internet. If you rely on set amounts of ingredients when you cook, you can find all the measured quantities you want on recipe websites. My recipe is a synthesis of dozens of different recipes that I researched and played with to turn out a reliable, acceptable product that I didn't have to measure to prepare. So let's get started. Preheat the oven to 450 Fahrenheit. The ingredients are flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, fat, and milk. I use unbleached all-purpose flour. You play around with your favorite flour. I've tried all the acceptable forms of fat, including lard, vegetable shortening, and butter, and I prefer the taste of butter in the biscuits. I've tried 1%, 2%, whole milk, and buttermilk. 2% is perfectly acceptable, but if you're not including biscuits as a regular part of your diet, buttermilk is superior. Half a gallon of buttermilk will last for a few weeks in the fridge and will make 3 to 6 batches of biscuits depending on the size. Now let's talk amounts. The flour determines how big the batch of biscuits will be. In my mind, I imagine around 2 cups of flour for a regular batch and 3 or more cups for bigger batches. I think of a cup as the amount of flour that can be held in my hand. I don't actually hold it in my hand. I just approximate it and dump it into the bowl. So for a regular batch of biscuits that makes about 12 biscuits, I start with what I imagine is about 2 cups of flour in a bowl. Next, I add a half a palm of baking powder, a pinch of salt, a pinch of sugar, and I mix the dry ingredients very well. The next part is crucial. The fat that we add, in this case the butter, needs to be cold. Fresh out of the fridge is good. We want to mix the butter into the dry ingredients, but we don't want to smash it. So I use 2 butter knives to work the larger pieces of butter into the dry mix, distributing it evenly and reducing the size of the pieces. How much butter? Well, enough. And enough means that small pieces of butter are evenly distributed throughout the mixture. For a regular batch, that's about 1/3 to 1/2 a stick of butter. For bigger batches, you add more butter until there's a nice even mixture. What I've just made is similar to the commercial product Bisquick. At this point, shredded cheese or raisins can be added. Adding the shredded cheese makes for a great dinner biscuit, and raisins taste great for breakfast. Once the fat has been evenly distributed, it's time for the milk. In this case, I'm using buttermilk. And how much? Well, again, enough. And enough means that we add a little at a time, stirring until the mixture holds itself together. I want to take care not to overmix the dough. I just want to mix it so that it sticks together and can be handled. I put a little flour out on the flat surface and I roll the ball of dough around in the flour so it doesn't stick to the table. I take care not to smash the dough, but to simply work it over a few times. That's it. It's ready to be rolled out. I put flour on the rolling pin and aim to flatten the dough to about 1 inch of thickness. A glass makes a good biscuit cutter. Play around with different sizes. You'll find some round object in your kitchen that cuts biscuits just like you like them. Place the cut biscuits on an ungreased cooking sheet. Roll out the leftover dough and continue to cut. It's amazing to me that the time it takes my oven to heat up to 450 Fahrenheit is exactly the time it takes me to prepare the biscuits for baking. Now that's harmony. Set the timer for 10 minutes, but don't let that tell you when the biscuits are done. Keep an eye on them and leave them in a little longer if they're not golden brown on top. Use a spatula to remove the biscuits from the sheet and get those incredible biscuits onto the table to be enjoyed by everyone. I encourage you to learn this art. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. A few bad batches of biscuit doesn't make you a bad cook. In fact, a few bad batches of biscuits will quickly turn you into a great cook. You'll learn from your mistakes and master an art form that has been around for hundreds of years. Your friends and family will thank you. Until next time, good biscuit making.